So I recently got the Olympus 4 from Altra. The way that I did that was with their warranty program. I originally purchased the Lone Peak 4, and I convinced Altra that I had blown out the shoe. They sent me the Olympus 3.5, which I love. I convinced Altra that I blew out this 3.5. They sent me another 3.5, which was my go-to shoe. I used it in Yosemite and in the Trinity Alps and Humboldt, in NorCal. And I convinced them that I had destroyed this 3.5, and they sent me a 4. Alright, and basically what I found with the Olympus 4 is that I kind of feel like the 3.5 is a little bit better. And I don't want to put Altra on blast. I mean, obviously they've sent me numerous shoes for the price of one, so I couldn't be happier. But yeah, the concept of the Olympus is that it's a Maximus stack height sneaker that's great for backpacking because it's got a ton of cushion. But what I found is that the Olympus 4 doesn't have a soft EVA foam cushion on it. It doesn't have a Dream Ride cushion. It has a firm, snappy, race day runner's shoe EVA foam midsole. And so as a result, I don't really think it works great for backpacking because the midsole is just too hard. And when you're going backpacking, you want a EVA midsole that's nice and soft and gives you a Dream Ride cushion for backpacking. But Altra is not a backpacking company. These are running shoes, and Altra is kind of leaning towards race day, where you have a pair of shoes that work for training, but if you're going to be in a race, you can still wear them, and they're snappy enough and responsive enough for running fast, in a race. And that's not necessarily what you want for backpacking. The Olympus 3.5 has got a great cushion in the midsole, and it's also a really resilient, durable, soft EVA foam that doesn't lose its loft over time. And it's also got this huge bumper on the back, which I think works well. It was shaved off on the 4, and some people say that helps because it reduces weight. But to be perfectly honest, the concept of the Olympus is that it's a Maximus stack height shoe. So, if you wanted to shave weight off the shoe, you could just get a different shoe. You could get the Lone Peak from Altra, which simply has a thinner EVA midsole. It has less EVA midsole. So, yeah, it just seems like the 3.5 to me is the better shoe for backpacking. The two issues with the 3.5 is, one of them is that you can see how there's like no lugs on the heel of the shoe, and it kind of could get slippery and turn into like a snowboard if you step on it wrong on the dirt. The other issue with it is that it's got this mesh upper. The mesh upper is ultra breathable, so say if you're walking on the beach and an unexpected wave washes over your feet and gets your shoes wet, as long as you're wearing an ultra lightweight pair of socks, about 30 minutes later your feet will be dry because it's just super ventilated and it dries out super quick. But one issue with this mesh material is that it holds on to smell really bad. So if you're walking in mud, that kind of stinks, or if you're walking in snow, that kind of stinks. In Yosemite, I was walking in the snow in May, and then my car smelled like a dead mouse, and so did my room. And I eventually figured out that it was this mesh had started to smell bad. For some reason in the snow in Yosemite, it smelled like a dead mouse. And it hung on to that smell, and I actually had to put it in the washing machine. So with the Altra 4s, you can see how they switched to this kind of polyester material on the Lone Peak 4 and on the Olympus 4. So, the Lone Peak 3.5 was really the most popular Altra shoe, and that's when Altra jumped onto the backpacking scene. And it had a nice soft Maximus stack height EVA foam midsole that was slightly more minimalistic than on the Olympus. And then the Olympus really is in the spirit of that same 3.5. So you've got the Lone Peak 3.5, which was a favorite. You've got the Olympus 3.5, which was also a favorite. Then you've got the Lone Peak 4, which had some tweaks to it. It had some changes. And then you end up seeing the same changes on the Olympus 4. So it's got that polyester upper here. And it's also got way more lugs. So you've got, instead of having this kind of like snowboard effect on the heel on the Olympus 3.5, where there's no traction, there's no lugs, they've got all these extra lugs. But one issue with Vibram is that This is not the hardest rubber that Vibram sells. They don't sell their toughest rubber to other companies. So these lugs most likely will come off, and they're kind of small. And so you've got small cleats basically that are probably going to come off and go, and in the bottom of the shoe is going to be like flat. And then you've also got an EVA midsole that doesn't really squish. So, you know, you've got like 3/4 of an inch of stack height here, but your heel is only sinking down into the shoe like a centimeter, you know? So there's really no, you're not utilizing this material, you know, your foot's not sinking down into that EVA foam, so you're not really using it, and then that ends up just adding weight to the shoe. Ultra's making the Lone Peak 5, which is similar to the Olympus 4, but with less EVA midsole in the stack height, and that does seem to make more sense. I mean, since your foot's not really utilizing the stack height, your foot's not squishing down into that EVA foam, you could simply just go with a thinner midsole. For instance, on Solomon, they don't use EVA foam, and they just use less. It's much thinner, and it's a different material. It protects your feet from the sharp rocks on the ground, but they know that they don't need to use that much, so it's just like a centimeter thick, you know, instead of like 3/4 of an inch thick. There's another company out there called Hoka that's been struggling with their EVA midsoles. They made some really dreamy Maximus stack height dream ride, like you're walking on a cloud midsoles, like one called the Evo Mafate. But what would happen is when your foot would press down on the EVA foam, the air would squish out of it and the midsole would lose its loft and become hard. So runners would just have like a collection of shoes and put them on the shelf and only use them like once a month in order to take advantage of that EVA foam, allowing the EVA foam like 3 weeks to puff back up and regain its loft, because it takes a long time for this EVA foam to poof back up. All right, but if you're a backpacker and you're using your shoe every single day, that's not going to work. You want an EVA foam that doesn't lose its loft, and that's what they had on the 3.5 with the Olympus. But it doesn't seem like they stuck with that idea on the Olympus 4. Now, over at Hoka, they came out with the Rincon, which they promised would be like a dream ride. They named it after a surf spot in Australia and said that the shoe was going to be just as awesome as that surf spot. But they pre-compressed their foam. So to prevent the foam from losing its loft, they compressed it first and then put it into the shoe. And that just caused that dream foam to be tough. It just made the foam hard. You know, and so they've been coming out with hard shoes, and that's kind of what's going on with this Olympus 4, is that the foam is hard. You know, it kind of feels like pre-compressed foam where it's not going to work. You can get blisters from it, you know, really. Over at Hoka, they did come out with another shoe that was popular called the Mach 4, But it just seems like there's a trend in shoes today where they're not really sure what EVA foam to put in there. Even though, to be honest with you, I think they got it right with the 3.5s from the Ultra Olympus 3.5. I think is the best. It's my favorite. I never had the Lone Peak 3.5. Maybe if I had had that one, it would have been my favorite. But since I never used the Lone Peak 3.5, the Olympus 3.5 was my favorite. And the Olympus 4 is a lot different. It just doesn't seem to ride the same. It doesn't seem like it's the same.